الله أكبر الله أكبر.
Hawk Actual, this is Bravo 6. We are inbound, ETA 2 minutes.
أيها الجيش الأسود، أنتم درع الأمة، ارفعوا أسلحتكم وكونوا مستعدين للنصر.
For over a decade, he was a ghost. No face, no voice, no confirmed location. Yet his name was feared across the world. Governments hunted him. Armies searched for him. Entire intelligence networks failed to find him. But in his final hours, the man no one could catch made one mistake. And it changed everything. They called him many things. The Architect, the Shadow, the most wanted man alive. No one knew exactly where he came from, but everyone knew what he had done. Coordinated attacks, disappeared without a trace, always one step ahead. Every time intelligence agencies got close, he vanished. He didn't use phones, didn't trust technology, didn't even trust people. Instead, he built a system of silence. Messages passed by hand, movements planned months in advance, loyalists who would die before speaking. He wasn't just hiding, he was untouchable. For years, the world's most powerful agencies chased shadows. Millions spent, thousands of operatives deployed. Nothing, until a pattern emerged. Not from him, but from someone around him. A courier. A man who never used digital communication, but moved between cities with strange precision. Always careful, always quiet, but not invisible. They watched him for months, tracked every movement, every stop, every contact. And then one day, he led them somewhere unexpected. Not a cave, not a bunker, a house. At first glance, it was ordinary. A large compound. High walls, no internet connection, no phone lines, no visitors. But something felt wrong. The trash was burned, not collected. No one ever left, except the courier. And the residents never showed their faces. Even the children never played outside. IT was like, the house didn't want to be seen. Surveillance increased. Drones circled silently above. Thermal imaging detected multiple occupants, but one figure always stayed inside, never stepped out, never showed himself. That was him. Inside the compound, something had changed. The man who never panicked was restless, pacing, watching, waiting. He didn't know how, but he felt it. The walls that had protected him for years suddenly felt exposed. Outside, unmarked helicopters were being prepared. Elite forces briefed. Weapons checked in silence. No mistakes. No second chances. Inside the house, lights stayed off. No one slept. The courier had stopped coming. And for the first time in years, the most wanted man was uncertain. The operation had begun. Under the cover of darkness, helicopters crossed into hostile airspace. No lights, no signals, just silence and precision. Every second mattered, every movement calculated. Inside the compound, a noise, faint, distant, but real. The man stopped moving, listened. Too late. Chaos. Controlled, but violent. Doors breached. Rooms cleared in seconds. Commands shouted in the dark. Years of searching had led to this moment. Floor by floor, room by room. Closer, closer. And then, they reached him.
No speeches, No escape.
Just seconds. And then, silence. The helicopters left as quietly as they came. The compound, now empty. The man who had evaded the world 4 years was gone. In the end, he wasn't caught in a grand battle or a dramatic chase. Just a single moment where the shadows failed him and the world finally caught up. For years, he was the most wanted man on Earth, but in his final hours, he was just a man with nowhere left to run. The silence didn't last long. Within hours of the operation, the world began to feel the impact. At first, it was subtle. Unusual military movement. Sudden communication between governments. Newsrooms receiving fragments of unconfirmed reports. Something had happened. Something big. But no one knew exactly what. Inside secure facilities, confirmation was already spreading. Analysts reviewed footage. Intelligence officers cross-checked identity markers. Every detail had to be verified. There was too much at stake for mistakes. And then finally, it was confirmed. The man the world had been searching for was gone. The announcement didn't come immediately. It couldn't. Leaders debated timing, wording, and consequences. Because this wasn't just the end of a man, it was the end of a symbol. And symbols don't disappear quietly. When the news finally broke, it spread faster than anything before it. Headlines took over every screen. Broadcasts interrupted programming. Social media erupted within seconds. Some people celebrated. Others questioned. Many simply watched, trying to process what it meant. For years, his name had represented fear, mystery, and power. Now that name had an ending. But endings are rarely that simple. Behind the scenes, the operation wasn't over. In fact, in many ways, it was just beginning. Intelligence teams returned to the compound, not as soldiers, but as investigators. Every room was examined. Every object documented. Hard drives, handwritten notes, hidden compartments, anything that could reveal what had been hidden for years. Because a man like him didn't just disappear without leaving something behind. And they were right. Inside the compound, they found fragments of a larger story. Names. Locations. Plans that had never been executed. Connections that stretched further than anyone expected. The deeper they looked, the more complicated everything became. This wasn't just a single individual operating in isolation. It was a network. And parts of that network were still active. As analysts pieced together the information, a new concern began to emerge. Removing the leader didn't necessarily destroy the system. In some cases, it made it more unpredictable, more dangerous. Without a central figure, smaller groups could act independently, without coordination or restraint. The world had removed the face of the threat, but not the threat itself. Meanwhile, far from the compound, reactions continued to unfold. Governments increased security. Intelligence agencies monitored communications more aggressively than ever. There was a fear that retaliation could come at any moment, from anywhere. But something unexpected happened. Nothing. No immediate response.
No coordinati retaliation.
Just silence. At first, that silence felt like relief. But as days passed, it began to feel something else entirely. Suspicious. Because in the world he came from, silence was never empty. It always meant something. Back inside the investigation, one discovery changed everything. Hidden within a sealed section of the compound, behind walls that had gone unnoticed during the initial raid, was a small room.
No windows.
No obvious purpose. Just a locked container. Inside it were documents. Not plans for attacks. Not lists of targets. But something far more unsettling. Personal records. Detailed observations. Dates. Patterns. Behavior analysis. It wasn't about what he had done. It was about what he had been watching. And the targets weren't random. They were specific. Influential figures. Strategic locations. Key decision-makers across different parts of the world. It suggested something chilling. For all the years he had been hiding, he wasn't just surviving. He was preparing. But for what? That question didn't have an immediate answer. And that uncertainty began to spread through the intelligence community. Because if the operation had happened even a little later, what would they have found instead? How close had the world come to something worse? As this realization set in, another detail surfaced. Something small, almost insignificant at first. The courier. The man who had unknowingly led them to the compound. He wasn't who they thought he was. His background didn't fully match. His movements, while consistent, had gaps. Moments where he disappeared completely, outside of the patterns they had tracked. It raised a new possibility. What if he hadn't been followed? What if he had led them there, on purpose? The idea was difficult to accept, but the evidence couldn't be ignored. Because if that was true, it meant the most important breakthrough in the entire operation hadn't been luck. It had been allowed. And that changed everything. Because it suggested that even in his final hours, the most wanted man in the world might not have been as unaware as everyone believed. Maybe he knew. Maybe he sensed the end was coming, and chose not to run. But why would someone who had spent years avoiding capture suddenly stop? That question lingered, unanswered. Days turned into weeks, and the global tension slowly began to ease. Security levels stabilized. The immediate fear of retaliation faded. Life, for most people, returned to normal. But inside intelligence circles, the story wasn't over. It couldn't be. Too many pieces didn't fit. Too many questions remained. And then came the final revelation. Among the documents recovered from the compound was a single note. Short, direct, almost easy to overlook. But once it was understood, it changed the narrative completely. It wasn't a plan. It wasn't a warning. It was a statement. A message that seemed to be written not for his followers, but for those who would eventually find it. It suggested that everything, the years of hiding, the silence, the isolation, had all been part of something bigger. Something that didn't end with him. Something that couldn't be stopped by removing one man. The exact meaning of that message was never made public. Official reports avoided it. Discussions around it remained classified. But among those who had seen it, there was a shared understanding. This wasn't the end of the story. It was just the end of a chapter. And perhaps that was the most unsettling part of all. Because for years, the world had focused on one man, one face, one target. And now that he was gone, there was nothing left to focus on. No clear enemy. No single name. Just an idea. And ideas don't disappear. They evolve. They spread. They wait. In the end, the operation was considered a success. A mission that achieved its objective with precision and finality. A moment that would be remembered as a turning point. But beneath that success, there was a quieter truth. One that didn't make headlines. One that didn't appear in official statements. The world's most wanted man had been found. He had been stopped. But whatever he had started was never fully understood. And maybe that was the real story all along. For years, the world searched for a man hiding in the shadows. But in the end, it wasn't the man that mattered. It was the shadow he left behind.